Good evening and welcome to Face for the Newsfirst team. I'm Niresh Eliathambi. I am delighted to welcome to our Newsfirst studio François Valerian, who is the chairman of Transparency International, the chairman of the Global Transparency International. François, welcome to Newsfirst.
Thank you very much for your invitation.
It's lovely to have you here. And this is your first time visiting Sri Lanka.
It's my first time visiting Sri Lanka, but not the last one.
That's good to hear.
Very happy to be here.
Right. So tell us about your visit to Sri Lanka. Whom did you meet and how many days will you be here?
I'm spending 4 days in your country, visiting our chapter in Sri Lanka. We are present in more than 100 countries worldwide, and TI Sri Lanka, TISL, is one of our most active and vibrant chapters. So with TI Sri Lanka, we met yesterday with the Secretary to the President, and we will have other meetings on Monday, and we are meeting with the two co-chairs of the steering committee of the National Anti-Corruption Action Plan. We will also meet with partners, and I had a great pleasure to meet with the team of TI Sri Lanka, the young people, very enthusiastic, who want to uphold integrity in Sri Lanka and fight corruption, as TI Sri Lanka has done for the last 22 years.
Excellent. And we at Newsfirst have a very good rapport with TI Sri Lanka, of course, as they work to strengthen democracy and governance, which is also what Newsfirst strives to do as well. So, François, tell me a little bit about the global operations of Transparency International.
Well, as I said, we are in more than 100 countries. We were founded in 1993, so a little more than 30 years ago. And we have a very simple purpose, which is to fight for political power to be exercised to the benefit of the people and not to the benefit of the power holder. It is as simple as that, but as all of us know, complicated to achieve, right, in every country, not only in Sri Lanka. And that's what we aim at. So we've grown over the years, and with other civil society organizations, with well-intended governments as well, we've obtained a number of laws, institutions, also international treaties that are supposed to fight against corruption. But now we want all that to function really. Not only words, but also acts and facts. So that's what we want.
Right. And operating in over 100 countries, that's a massive task because each country is different, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. Each country is different, has its own problems. Now there are commonalities. And among those commonalities, there is an attitude among some political leaders, not all of them, some of them, which consists in seeing political power as a place where you can extract private wealth from common good. And that's what we fight against. And that's a commonality across all countries, worldwide, in every country, in every continent, in every region. And so that's the fight that is ours. And there are other commonalities, which is the global environment. There are a number of challenges to mankind currently. The climate transition, the demographic transition, the digital transition, or the sustainable development goals, fighting against hunger, poverty, war. And to address all those global issues, we need international cooperation. And international cooperation is very important. And we will only address all those challenges through international cooperation and not international confrontation. And that's a thing to bear in mind, because we often hear the opposite narrative.
Now, Francois, you listed out a number of global challenges, but they are all, to a great part, to a great extent, interconnected, aren't they? If you talk about the environment, climate change, human rights, war, they are, it's the same players and the same part of the same narrative, isn't it?
Yes, there are common goods. Those common goods are to be defended and enhanced. Environment, climate, that's a common good. Peace also is a common good. And you also have common goods that have been created by the societies, like education and health. And the mission of the political power is to preserve and enhance those common goods for the benefit of the public, for the benefit of all. Whatever the policies that are pursued, because we are not a partisan organization, there are various solutions and it's the political debate. But we need a political power that is preserving and enhancing that common good. And to do that, we need public money. And public money has to be used within the country for the citizens, not stolen, diverted to other countries, across borders, invested in a few countries, the UK, France, my own country, the US, other countries, Australia, New Zealand, all that going through offshore centers, small islands or Dubai or Singapore, and all that I'm referring to, that's what we call the global economy of corruption. And every year you have $1 trillion, $1,000 billion that are stolen from most countries and that are invested in the real estate or capital markets of a few countries. And this money is missing. This money is missing. So that within the countries, you have a number of victims who lack access to the minimum level of public services because the money is missing. And money is missing also to pay civil servants, to pay people with a small parcel of power, so that you are creating a number of opportunities for corruption, extortion, monetary extortion, sexual extortion as well, and you make a number of victims. So that there is a link between those immense amounts of money that are being stolen and the daily corruption citizens are suffering from.
This is very interesting to hear because we in Sri Lanka are very familiar with this siphoning off of public money, public funds, and then it disappears. It does reappear. We see properties being bought, luxury vehicles being bought, and we hear of this money being invested overseas, especially in the Middle East or in Western countries. But this is a common narrative among most countries, isn't it? You see this same system happening in so many countries.
Yes, clearly. It's a global issue. It's an issue in the Indo-Pacific region. It's an issue between Africa, Middle East, and Europe. It's an issue between Latin America and North America or Western Europe. And what is very important to understand is that it is not a zero-sum game. It is not money simply flowing from a country to another one and from a pocket to another one. It destroys value because it transforms public money that is potentially extremely useful for health, for education, for the environment, for the climate. It transforms that money into useless money, which is only invested in real estate and secondary capital markets, where this money is inflating prices. Now, the corrupt leaders who are stealing public money and investing it elsewhere, they are not investing in technological startups or in new drugs to treat cancer. No, they are not taking risks. They are only spending their money in those goods where they inflate prices so that they do not create value abroad and they destroy value in their countries. There is a response, if you allow me, there is a strong responsibility of the northern countries in fighting against that, because it's a global economy and there are a number of enablers, lawyers, accountants, advisors who are helping this money to be invested, so that there is a responsibility of the northern countries or of the Emirates, Singapore, Hong Kong, China, to also fight against this global economy of corruption.
In this corruption game, there are victims. It's money being siphoned from one country to another, from one hand to another. It's not a victimless crime. It's, in many ways, the entire population of a country is the victim.
Yes, yes. That's Sri Lanka experienced very clearly with a terrible economic crisis that hit your country in 2022. And it was very clear to Transparency International Sri Lanka, to civil society organizations, to the civil society as a whole, as I could see from the outside, but all our movement has followed these historic events with great attention. It was very clear that corruption was at the root of the problems, that it was not only an economic crisis, that it was a crisis in governance, in poor governance, in complete lack of accountability. And the mass uprising of 2022 demanded accountability. The report that was published by civil society organizations in 2023, the civil society governance diagnosis, demanded structural reforms and an anti-corruption action plan. And now we see with great interest that there is a national anti-corruption action plan, that there is the Clean Sri Lanka program. So all that is very interesting. And now the main challenge remains, which is to implement all that. As I was saying, to go beyond the plans and to implement, to enforce.
In the uprising in 2022, which we of course in Sri Lanka know as the Aragalaya, the call of the people was for a complete system change. They rejected the existing system of corruption and they wanted it completely changed. But the public, the population, they really had no idea of what the new system should be, how it should be set up. And that's where it's very important for organizations like Transparency International to come with guidelines, international best practices, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. And there are several aspects. There are some laws that have to be passed. And it was the case, for example, very recently with the beneficial ownership law, which is very important, with access of public to the wealth that is detained by entities behind which you have people who are hiding. So that's very important in terms of fighting against this economy of corruption. So that's one example. Another important aspect is that we need the laws, we need enforcement. But we won't have enforcement if we don't have civil society monitoring. The people have a right to know. They have a right to know what is being done with the public money, what is being done with the public contracting, what is being done with the public debt. All that is important because it's the money of the people. And for knowing that, we need a civil society with freedoms. Freedom, right to know, freedom of expression, and the media and the journalists play a very important role, and they can't be threatened by powers, whatever those powers, so that it is very important to defend civic space. And there is a tendency now in many countries to restrain civic space, to think that the strong hand is the solution to the problems, whereas concentration of power is only concentration of abuse of power. And now, in terms of the solutions to put in place, well, the laws exist. The institutions exist. Most of them exist in Sri Lanka like in other countries, but it has to function. And in particular, the judiciary system has to be able to prosecute corruption cases, which means to prosecute them until the conclusion of the case, so that there is real sentencing of the culprits. And if it is done in a systemic manner, yes, things change. Yes, the system changes, and what the people wanted in Sri Lanka in 2022 will become reality in Sri Lanka, like in other countries.
The changing of the system and the need for the judicial process to continue to the very end of every case. That's important, isn't it? It's not just about arresting someone. It is about gathering the evidence, finding the witnesses, finding all the documentation, and having the laws and processes in place to take this to a conclusion.
Exactly. Well, we will hire you within Transparency International. So I don't need to answer. It's exactly what we need. Arrests are important. And then we need to have the next steps. And what we see in too many countries is that, yes, you have prosecutions that start because there is some public demand, or the journalists have written an article and there is some need to do it, so that there is something that happens. There is a start. It's always good to have a start. You need to start. You don't want to do nothing. But then we need to have the whole procedure in a reasonable amount of time. We know that in every country, justice takes time, and it's good because we do not want justice within days or overnight. So that's a dictatorship, that's not a democracy. But justice has to be to go until the conclusion. Either the person is not culprit and the person is innocent, so which is fine, or this person is a culprit and has to be sentenced. And what we see in the countries which are really serious about fighting against corruption and serious about the long term is this conclusion of judiciary proceedings. And for that, we need to have resources for the judiciary system, financial and staff resources. And we need to have a judiciary system that is independent from political intervention.
Excellent. Now, where does Transparency International fit in with its local chapters in such a process? If you take Sri Lanka for an example, or perhaps Bangladesh, where you are going to, I believe, after you leave Sri Lanka, how do the local chapters fit into this process?
Well, we are a coalition of national chapters. So the work, the crucial work, is being done country by country by the national chapter. So TI Sri Lanka is not asking us for permission before they are doing anything. So they are the masters of what they have to do because they are from Sri Lanka, they know what the challenges are, and they make recommendations on how to address those challenges. And we are a coalition, we are not like a company with headquarters and subsidiaries. So I'm simply chairing a board with a coordinating secretariat in Berlin, but we are supporting chapters. What I'm doing right now in Sri Lanka, what I will do next week in Bangladesh, where the situation is very different from Sri Lanka. Still, last year we had a corrupt power which was ousted, and now we have a sort of blank sheet and we have a chapter which is making a number of recommendations. So that's how we function, and it allows us to be very close to the ground, very close also to the local communities. There is a very important work which is being done by TI Sri Lanka, which is to reach out to local communities. And TI Sri Lanka has offices in various cities of the country, and we also have centers that are advising citizens about their rights, particularly the right to information, so that we are close to the community, and that closeness to the communities also feed our national advocacy. So that's how we are working country by country. Now, the strength of our movement is that we are addressing a global problem, right? So that we need this cooperation between chapters to exchange best practices, to exchange informations, also sometimes to work on illicit flows that left one country to be invested in another country. And it's very frequent that we are present on both ends of the flow. And on the investing end, if I may say, where the money is invested, it may happen that we have institutions that more or less function so that we are able to introduce legal filings in that country where the money has landed, in cooperation with the chapter of the country where the money was stolen. And that's the strength of a global movement.
Transparency International is a truly global movement, isn't it? Because I noticed that even though you were founded in Berlin in the early 90s, your board of and you have a very large board. They are from many countries, including, I think, mostly from the Global South.
Yes, and the vice chair of our board, Kera Fitoson, is from Madagascar. She used to run the chapter in Madagascar. So that, yes, we are from different, very various countries, and mostly from the south. Yes, definitely.
Excellent. And when it comes to, now you spoke about the two ends, where money can flow from and where the money lands. Do you work hands-on with governments in both those ends, or how does it work?
It's a very important question. We have to work with the judiciary systems, or at least with one of the two judiciary systems concerned. Obviously, when money is stolen in Venezuela by the Venezuelan government, which is stealing money, harassing civil society in Venezuela, we can't work with the judiciary system in Venezuela. But we are working with the judiciary systems of the US, of Western Europe, where the money is being invested. But we have to work with judiciary systems, or at least with one of the two judiciary systems concerned, so one of the two ends. And very often it's the judiciary system of the country which ultimately receives the money, because you have a sort of physics of dirty money. So dirty money is leaving countries often with institutions that are not perfectly stable, and is invested in more stable countries and or institutions, because corrupt leaders want their money to be safe. So that there is always a chance to work with the judiciary system, which is more or less in a state that allows us to have a good cooperation.
We need to take a short break now. I am with François Valerian, who is the global chairman of Transparency International. Don't go away, we'll be right back.
A trusted place for your fixed deposits. Valuable FD, 10.25% for 15 months, 11% for 24 months. Valuable FD, the symbol of stability.
The wait is over. 8 nations, one dream. The battle begins. Asia's biggest cricket clash returns. Asia Cup 2025 starts September 9th. Feel the roar. Catch all the action only on TV1.
Welcome back to Face to Face. I am with François Valerian, who is the global chairman of Transparency International. François, let's talk about the nature of rights and governance worldwide. Now, for many years, we had an atmosphere or an environment around the world which seemed encouraging or conducive towards the growth of good governance and human rights. But right now, the pendulum seems to have swung the wrong way, perhaps, and we see a shrinking of the space in which governance matters can be pushed forward. And this seems to be a global phenomenon. Of course, there are exceptions to the rule, such as Sri Lanka, but what is your opinion of this global phenomenon?
Clearly, we have a concern with this rise of an authoritarian narrative, and with the narrative according to which the concentration of power into one man or one group of men's hands is the solution to the problems. And the difficulty that we observe, the problem that we observe, is that in many countries, people are so desperate, or there has been such a failure by previous governments or elites, that people are attracted by what is presented to be as the simple and efficient solution, whereas we know that it is not the solution, and that it will only increase the harm to the people over, at the latest, the medium term. So it is very important for us to counter this narrative and to be able to explain to the people that they have a right to express themselves, they have a right to know. Their leaders do not have all rights, because if they give to their leaders all the power, if they allow their leaders to live in permanent conflicts of interest, to justify corruption, to suspend the anti-corruption laws, all that will be to the detriment of the people, and they will only reinforce the abuse of power. That's a big fight that we are fighting and that we have to fight, we and all civil society organizations, all the people concerned with democracy. Because there is also some skepticism about democracy, and people think that democracy is not working. But what is not working is, to some extent, the democracy of yesterday, the democracy that was only with elections more or less well organized, with electoral campaigns, with opaque financing, and in the meantime citizens were not consulting on anything. What we are promoting is a democracy of tomorrow, a democracy where citizens are being consulted on every project that matters to them. A democracy where citizens are free to organize themselves, to assemble, to demonstrate. A democracy where people know the use of the public money because it is their money. And that's what we are promoting. And there is nothing wrong in that. It's a matter of efficiency. It's not only a matter of ethics. It is more efficient to the well-being of the people.
In a climate like the present day one, where authoritarianism is on the rise and the space for dissent is shrinking, how important would you say it is to keep pushing the boundaries and keep fighting that fight to make sure that there is sufficient space, and that someday when the pendulum swings back again, that it will swing all the way?
Well, the civil society organizations or the civil society groups, we are not necessarily preaching for ourselves, so the civil society groups, the groups of citizens, and the media with their journalists are the two spaces that are working together in exchanging information and in allowing free expression and in exercising right to information. Without a decent existence and space for those two groups, we don't have a democracy, we have abuse of power, and we have much harm to the entire population. We won't have climate defended, we won't have environment defended, we won't have health at a sufficient level, education at a sufficient level, and all that will deteriorate. So yes, it is difficult because in many countries it is now dangerous to be a journalist, it is dangerous to be an anti-corruption activist, it is dangerous to be a human rights defender, an environmental activist, because you are harming entrenched and brutal interests that are fighting back. Yes, it is dangerous, it is risky, and it is one of the most important fights of our times.
Now, coming back to Sri Lanka, how do you view the progress of governance, transparency, accountability, and all that goes along with it? How do you see it, perhaps over the past year, but also putting into context in the recent past, the last 5 years or so?
Well, there have been clearly positive developments. So these announcements of broad and far-reaching policies, we have to see how it evolves and how it's put in place and enforced. We have to see that, but still we have those announcements. There have been judiciary filings that have been asked for by TI Sri Lanka, which go in the right direction. I'm thinking of this express catastrophe in 2021 with now accountabilities that have been recognized. There is this beneficial ownership law that has been recently passed with access of public. So all that is positive. Clearly goes in the right direction, which does not mean that we will not remain critical observers and actors of what's happening, so that we really need to have implementation of the policies with, again, a judiciary system that functions and that goes until the end of the judiciary proceedings.
It is important to keep the pressure on and to ensure that the pace, the speed at which reforms are being carried out continue, and it doesn't slack off and grind to a halt, which we often see after a couple of years.
Right, and then when we see that, which is unfortunately the case, or has been the case in a number of countries, it reinforces the sentiment of the citizens that nothing is possible against corruption, that corruption is normal, and then they are attracted by simple solutions which are not solutions at all. So that's clearly the challenge. Those policies have to be sustained, have to be carried out in a sustainable manner so that they bring results. Otherwise, there will be no results.
Now, in a country like Sri Lanka, where basically corruption was at a level that drove the government to bankruptcy, it was unable to service its foreign debts, and therefore there was no money to even purchase fuel for the country. It came to such a bad level, and then you see, of course, the pendulum swung back. But how should we progress from now on? Because it was easy enough to get to this point. You had the people voting in a new president, a new parliament, and the new government is setting certain systems in place. But how far can you go in ensuring that this does not happen again, and in bringing those culprits to justice, and possibly even recovering some of that money which has been taken?
Well, the way to go may seem long and difficult. And in the meantime, the laws are there, the institutions are there. So what needs to be done is to make those laws and institutions function. And that's what needs to be done. Yes, it is difficult, but it is also simple. It is also simple because the laws are there, the institutions are there, the commission to investigate on acts of bribery and corruption is there. And as I was saying, I will meet on Monday the Director General of this institution. So all the elements are there to make it function, to make it succeed. And in addition to that, there are the lessons from the very recent past. So it was extremely unfortunate for the Sri Lankan people to wait for 1 day, 2 days before having the oil to tank the car. So all the terrible things that happened in Sri Lanka. And in the meantime, it is recent, so that people remember what happened and what happened because of corruption. So that there are the lessons from the recent past. The institutions are there, the laws are there, the civil society is there, TI Sri Lanka is there, but other organizations also. There is absolutely no monopoly in the representation of civil society in any country. So that, yes, I'm hopeful and confident that Sri Lanka will progress thanks to the Sri Lankan people in the good direction for Sri Lanka.
So what you're saying is it is a matter of our national will, our determination that will allow us to take this country forward in terms of governance.
Right, and it is also a matter of sustained political will over the long run from the government, from those in power, whatever the government, to be able to carry out, to implement those policies with the oversight of the population, of the citizens.
When a country changes its ruling party, and I'm not referring just to Sri Lanka, but globally, we see very often this enormous shift in policy. In some countries, you don't see any shift at all. It is national policies are carried out no matter who is in office. But in many countries, you see a massive shift and the policies change completely. How do you deal with that?
What matters to us is not the type of economic or social or foreign affairs policy or defense policy that is being carried out. It is not the alliances with country X or country Y. It is the way power is exercised. That is what matters to us. It is the culture of exercise of power. And that's what matters. And what is concerning to us is when this exercise of power changes. When we move from a head of state who wanted to promote the fight against corruption to head of state with numerous conflicts of interest and who is not on an anti-corruption agenda. That's what is concerning to us. For the rest, policies may change. What we don't want to see change is the resolve to, yes, change the exercise of power and make sure that the power holders are working for the people and not for themselves. Their opinions on how to serve the people may differ, and that's the democratic game. And each election is or should be a competition between people and parties who have different views on how to serve the people. But what we don't want is to see elections that are only competitions between individuals who want to steal public money.
François, your visit this time is to 3 countries. I think you went to the Maldives and now you're here in Sri Lanka, and you will be visiting Bangladesh before you return back home.
Right.
3 countries which have a lot of governance problems.
Right.
And they, in many ways, they are similar, but in many ways they are different as well. Would you like to tell us a little bit about these 3 countries?
Yes. Well, the Maldives. It's a country also with a vibrant civil society, with with difficulties that are being very clear right now. And Transparency Maldives is among the organizations that show their concerns about the media bill that is currently discussed by the parliament, which is, in our view, another attempt at restraining the civic space. So it's something, every time you try to regulate the media or the NGOs, and I think there is also this idea somewhere here in Sri Lanka, in a manner which is too strict or a bit repressive, it is dangerous. It is dangerous for a good exercise of power, an exercise of power under the eyes of the citizens. And then in Bangladesh, the situation is different. We have this situation which is a post-revolution situation, if I may use this word of revolution, but it was close to a revolution last year. And we have a government which is preparing the elections, and the civil society which has formulated a number of demands for better governance, for to get rid of this entrenched corruption, which is also a problem in Bangladesh.
And we are almost out of time in what has been a very engrossing conversation. But my final question is, what about the TI Sri Lanka team here? Would you like to say a few words about their work here?
Yes, with great pleasure, because the most important thing in my job as the chair of Transparency International is to go and meet with the national chapters on the field, to work with them, to talk to journalists like you, and to meet with the team. And there is a team of young people, enthusiastic, very engaged, throughout the country. They are meeting with local communities, they are helping, supporting citizens, they are empowering citizens to exercise their rights. So it is always very energizing, very inspiring to me, and I'm very grateful to my colleagues of Transparency International Sri Lanka for all their work.
Lovely. And I'm afraid we are out of time. My thanks to François Valerian, who is the Global Chair of Transparency International. Thank you for taking the time to visit us.
Thank you very much for your invitation and this conversation.
And thank you to you at home for watching. Don't go away because the news is coming up next. Have a great evening.